Rachel, Bangor, fel ydych chi gyd yn gwybod, ydy dinas hynna Cymru, credwch yn y beidio, felly lle hanesyddol iawn. Dwi'n falch iawn o weld cynifer wedi gallu yn mynychu'r cyfarfod heddiw, sef ein cyfarfod cyffredinol blynyddol. Mae cyfarfod cyffredinol blynyddol fel arfer yn para 5 neu 10 munud ar y mwyaf. Ond dyn ni'n ceisio gwneud pethau'n wahanol yn y bwrdd iechyd ac manteisio ar y cyfle bod ni gyd yn dod at ein gilydd mwyn rhannu nid dim ond y pethau ffurfiol swyddogol dyn ni'n gorfod gwneud, ond hefyd rhoi dipyn bach o gefndir am rhai o'r datblygiadau. Yn ogystal â hynny, mi fyddwch chi wedi sylwi drws nesaf, mae yna nifer o stondinau o wasanaethau amrywiol, a gai annog chi i fynd i weld y gwaith yna, cael sgyrsiau gyda phobl sydd drws nesaf ar ddiwedd y cyfarfod os nad ydych chi wedi wneud yn barod. Felly, dwi eisiau mynd i gyfarfod cyffredinol ffurfiol mewn munud. Y trefn heddiw byddwn ni'n mynd trwy'r busnes ffurfiol. Yna mae yna gyflwyniadau gyda ni i ddangos rhai o'r datblygiadau yn y bwrdd iechyd. Yna ar ddiwedd y sesiwn mae gyda ni gwestiynau, cyfle i chi holi cwestiynau. Dyn ni wedi cael rhai cwestiynau ymlaen llaw ac na i ddeud rhywbeth mwy am hynny mewn munud. I droi felly at y rhan ffurfiol, ein cyfarfod blynyddol, cyfarfod cyffredinol blynyddol, dyn ni wedi cael rhai ymddiheuriadau oherwydd gofynion eraill, ac mae rheina wedi nodi. Gai ofyn i unrhyw un os maen nhw'n dymuno datgan buddiant. Unrhyw buddiant i ddatgan ynghylch y busnes dyn ni'n trafod, sgolch hwnna, dyma'ch cyfle chi i ddatgan unrhyw buddiant. Os nad oes, nawn ni symud ymlaen mewn munud. Gai hefyd groesawu pobl sydd naill ai'n gwylio yn fyw ar-lein, neu os ydych chi'n gwylio'r recordiad. Da ni tynnu'r hysbysebion allan ar y recordiad. Na, joc oedd hwnna. Ond os ydych chi yn gwylio'r recordiad neu'n gwylio'n fyw, dwi'n falch bod y dechnoleg yn gweithio'n dda heddiw. Felly, diolch i'r tîm sydd wedi sicrhau hynny. Reit, i droi felly at y cyfarfod cyffredinol a mi fydd yna sawl rhan, fydd gyda ni ein cyfrifon blynyddol, a dwi'n meddwl fod yna gopïau ar y byrddau. Yna fe wnawn ni droi at gyflwyniadau ac yna y cwestiynau yn y drefn yma. Troi felly at Carol yn gyntaf i grynhoi yr adroddiad blynyddol ac yna cyflwyno y materion arferol sydd i'w ystyried. Carol.
Diolch, Bew. I think I'm going to just use Lectern here and just check that you can hear me, so that's a good thing. Philippa's nodding. Prynawn da pawb, Carol Shillaby ydw I, Prif Weithredwr. I'm Carol Shillaby and I'm the Chief Executive of BCU University Health Board, and this is my third annual general meeting. I've been here just over 2 years, and absolutely delighted to be able to present some of the key headlines from our annual summary and review of our progress as a health board this year. You will have seen by the agenda that we do have presentations from colleagues, and they will be both interesting and stimulating, I'm sure, but only a flavour of the work that's been happening across the health board this year. So just in terms of who we are a very big health board. We're the biggest health board in Wales, and we serve the needs of 700 1,000 plus people across the region. And the feature of the NHS in Wales is built upon integrated health boards. So that means we do everything from primary care, so GP practices, dentists, optometrists, pharmacists, through community services, whether that be district nurses, health visitors, school nursing, mental health nursing and services in the community, physiotherapy, right the way through to hospital care, and then right the way through to specialist care. So heart transplantation and those sorts of things. We don't provide that ourselves, but we are a commissioner working with other organisations across Wales. We work in our region, of course, in North Wales, but we work importantly with colleagues into England, and very many patients that I meet have had care across the border as well, and we enjoy those relationships with others as an NHS. The other big focus is, whilst I talk about providing services, one of our core purposes is to help improve health and well-being for the population. So really important to underline the work that we do with local communities and with local authorities, with the voluntary sector, with housing associations and others. And all of those partners working together help to improve the well-being of the local population. Just in terms of, so what sort of year have we had? The public sector is particularly challenged, and the NHS is never far away from being on the headlines of the news media. And Betsy Cadwallader perhaps more so than others. But it has been a year of significant change for us, and it's been a year where we can start to point to really tangible improvement, and improvement really focused on some of our really key challenges. So one of the biggest things that people tell us is a challenge for them is accessing care. They often say actually the quality of care when we get there is pretty good, so thank you for that. But we waited a long time, or we found it hard to navigate our way through the system to get care. So reducing the waiting times for a large number of patients has been really important for us. It continues to be a challenge. I'll share a little bit more of that in a moment, but it is an absolute priority. The demand for emergency care. Often we think about our emergency departments, and when we see coverage of that on the media, we see a line of ambulances outside. And today, I'm afraid to say, you will see ambulances outside emergency departments, probably in most health organisations across the UK. And it is a real challenge. And of course, often we talk about the front door of the hospital, but we have very many people who are delayed in leaving hospital, and that works all the way back through. The investment in buildings and technology, we know we need to modernise, but we're often in an environment that predates the NHS even. And the NHS is in its late 70s this year. So how we modernise our estate is key, and then how we capture the issues and the benefits of technology. And we've been grappling with some of that. Managing the money, and for many of us, it will be only too real, the issues of cost of living, of increased taxation, etc. And as a health board, managing public money weighs very heavily on us as a responsibility that we have. So how we use money, how we deploy it to the best value is a critical priority. And there is a duty upon us. And you're going to hear from Russ a little bit later on how we've got on that. And then one of our other big challenges is the long-term sustainability of services. over quite a big geographical area, and services that are changing in their shape, in their technology, in the medical practice and other aspects as well. So we've got a big to-do list there, and we've been working hard to tackle some of that. So despite some of those challenges, and trying not to get too overwhelmed by them, we know that every single day staff across the organisation work very hard with partners, with patients, to really bring through some of those improvements and developments. I'm going to share just a few of the highlights. And it's at this point that I feel really guilty, because I sort of think, oh God, we could have mentioned that, or we could have mentioned this. Please do have a look in some of our reports online. We try very hard to get those messages out about the developments, but I'm just presenting a small few today. We've been focusing on the quality of care that we provide to our patients and our local population. That is often reviewed by Healthcare Inspectorate Wales. They hold the mirror up to us and tell us with their fresh eyes how we're doing. And there were two services in particular that were in escalation under Healthcare Inspectorate Wales, and both of those services have now been de-escalated, and that was Emergency Department at Ysbyty Glan-Clwyd and Vascular Services. They're still on an improvement journey, but we're really pleased with the work that has happened to make those very tangible improvements. You'll hear from Mr. Malik a bit later on orthopaedics, so I don't want to steal too much of his thunder. But our real focus on orthopaedic services, including a new orthopaedic hub in Llandudno, which we anticipate will be completed at the end of this year. That will enable us to do nearly 2,000 operations in Llandudno each year. And one of the biggest challenges for orthopaedic services has been during the winter, when we have more emergency patients who occupy the beds of people that we had allocated to orthopaedic surgery. And then really pioneering treatments using robotic technology. These are internationally leading developments, and just recently I was hearing about colleagues from Europe who'd come across to North Wales to learn about what we were doing here. Talked about digital innovations, and really pleased this year that we persuaded the Welsh Government to support our application for funding to improve health records for our mental health services. You may find it hard to believe that we still use quite a lot of paper, and those files are whizzing their way through and around the A55 and far beyond that. That makes it at times really difficult for our health and care practitioners to see the whole picture of a patient's history, and therefore to make the best decisions with that patient about their care options. There's a huge amount of work to modernise our systems and bring in an electronic health record, but we know it's been the subject for many years of improvement notices from external regulators and the coroners. So we're really pleased that the government is supporting us in that endeavour. We're delighted to be here in Bangor University, and thank you again for hosting us. We're very much a regular visitor. You can't shake us off now, Chris. And really, really pleased with the development of the medical school here in North Wales. It is a game changer, as I think the government and the First Minister said back when the opening happened, and it's a catalyst for more. So we know that there is a pharmacy school coming, and who knows what happens after that. So a wide range, not just of healthcare professionals, but other professionals coming to North Wales for their education training, that we hope we will get the value of that as a health board. And then I decided we needed 2 slides on successes, and that's because there is so much to talk about. And I'm going to just talk about perhaps some of the things that may not be quite as exciting to the general public, but I know it's very exciting to some colleagues in the room. So let me just say, we've been improving how we run the organisation. And that is really important because running an effective organisation means we will meet the needs of the population in a better way. So we've improved our governance, and whilst I can say that here, I will tell you that Audit Wales have said that. They're the independent voice of how we operate as an organisation. We've been improving financial governance and performance. That means we are using our money effectively. We're accounting for it effectively. Russ will go through that in a bit more detail. And we're focusing much more now on where we spend the public's money to get the very best outcomes. So the focus on value. We've invested hugely in our effort, our time, and our enthusiasm in leadership and cultural change. And this year, just as a development, one development of very many, 87 culture change leaders appointed across the organisation. We're going for 150, I think. Jason's in the room nodding. And these are people from within our organisation who really want to be part of helping us to improve. The Health Board is a really great place to work. On a very tangible note for people in our communities, we are working very hard indeed on reducing the time you need to wait for planned care. So that may be an outpatient appointment, a diagnostic test, or an operation and procedure. And we've a very big health board, so we've had very big numbers of people who've been waiting. And since January 25 to the end of June, and we've stepped into this year, a reduction of 47% of the numbers of people who've been waiting for their surgery, their planned care over that 2-year period. Now, that is way too long, and I'll say that very straightforwardly. But we aim to get that to 0, no one waiting by the end of this year. There are some specialties that are really quite hard in terms of not very many specialists in those areas, but nonetheless, we're taking on that challenge and we're going to pull out all the stops to achieve that. But we're also developing new services in the community, and I was really pleased to hear about some of the great developments that have been happening here in this part of North Wales on community assessment days for people to access physiotherapy services. And I would say that this was a truly partnership endeavour where we had the specialists of the physiotherapy service come, but we also had voluntary sector organisations greeting people, offering advice and support, and hundreds of people in our community access that. And then David just mentioned the stands that were in the room next door. It was great to see colleagues talking about and sharing our work on a quality management system. And again, people might think, what is that? Well, it's about how we design our services to be high quality from the start. So quality planning, it's about then what are the areas we need to improve, and we take feedback from people who use our services. We take feedback from people who are experts, and we translate that into improvements. And you're going to see just some of the improvements from some colleagues here. And importantly, we drive the ethos that quality is something that should exist in all of our work, and we should actively seek out where are our problems, where is it that we can make improvements, and that's a cultural change that we want to bring forward as an organisation. So there's a lot of reporting that has to happen, and you'll hear a little bit more of that in terms of last year. But when we look already, we are 1 quarter into this year. And this year, we, for the first time in this Health Board's history, submitted what's called a 3-year plan to the Welsh Government that was financially balanced. That shows the level of improvement and progress the Health Board is making. just because you have a plan doesn't mean you're going to have a magic wand and make everything right. But actually having a good plan gives us every chance of implementing that plan and making the real change that we have come here to do. The really key elements for us in this plan is really about a continued focus every single day of improving access to services, focusing on quality and focusing on the outcomes and the experience of people who use those services. Developing that long-term approach, that 10-year strategy. How will things need to change? How do we modernise as an NHS that isn't just focused on health services and the provision of services, but is focused on health? And then really take the learning from a whole range of things, but particularly our quality management system. How may we drive and make things better? How may we transform those services that are more fragile here in North Wales and in many places across the UK? We're going to drive forward our endeavours on an electronic health record, not just for mental health, but for the whole organisation. We've been quite bold, I would say, with the Welsh Government in terms of our expectations and our ambitions around this. It is incredibly expensive to put a new system in, but every time I get out and about and chat with clinical colleagues, so this comes up in conversation. If only we had an electronic record, it means our patients could access services in many different places and we'd have the information that we need. We're really focused on prevention and early intervention. A stitch in time saves 9, as they say, and a big focus on primary and community care in a system that is often drawn to secondary care. And then in order to make us a really effective organisation, do the best job we can for the people of North Wales, we will continue to build our effectiveness as a health board, the largest health board in Wales. So we do that working with people. So diolch yn fawr, thank you very much. I think I'm due to hand over to some presentations now, and we've got 3. And I was delighted to have a quick chat with our first presenters. And this is about an IV access service. So we have Nathan, Craig and Tesney.
Before we do all that, which of course, back to the annual report and the accounts. And
okay, we're going to do that first. Okay.
To the presentation, so we get all that's okay.
Brilliant.
So we can introduce Russell.
Brilliant. There we are, Russ. Over to you.
We'll just wait for the slides to catch up with where we are, and then we'll be off and running. Brilliant. So, diolch, Chair. Pondar everyone. So I'm Russell Caldicott-Dwy, Cyfarwyddwr Gaethedol, Placid Dwy, so Executive Director of Finance. I'm here just to take you through some of the financial positioning and how we've performed in the current financial year. So we'll talk a little bit about how we assess our performance, and then a little bit about who comes in and validates that performance for us as well. So without further ado, if we move to the next slide. So there are 2 key statutory duties. They're called the key financial duties, but the first is to deliver a balanced position over 3 years. So that is essentially, we only spend what we earn for 3 fiscal years. And then the second duty is to provide an integrated medium-term plan. That covers the next 3 years. So we've got a balanced position going forward as well. So there's a 6-year cycle. The 2 duties align to each other. There are some other targets that we need to undertake as well. So we look to make payments within 30 days to all of our non-NHS suppliers. That's to acknowledge the fact that we are a significant size and we're a big player in the community, and we need to make sure that we transact our cash obligations in an expedient manner. So making sure we do that is really important. We have a closing cash position that we have to deliver, and there's set parameters with Welsh Government around that. And then our capital expenditure. So revenue is slightly different to capital. There's money for day-to-day operations and there's money for estate infrastructure equipment and building those two together. So effectively, that's a separate target. What we have to do with that is deliver, not overspend, but essentially we can be underspent, but by no more than £500,000. And the way this is all assessed is that the Health Board submits annual accounts. The management effectively sends those in as draft. And then we have audit colleagues who come in and assess the performance and independently validate the performance figures that are then shared with the wider community. And just to be mindful, before we flick to the next page, we have been set a 8.6 million deficit plan in the current financial year. So it's difficult to hit that first duty. And we'll talk a little bit more as we go forward as to where the performance lay. Okay. So this is just talking about what the auditors tell us. So Audit Wales come in, they are independent to the Health Board, and they assess what we've put forward as our financial transactions for the year and our financial standing. They independently assess whether we portrayed that to be correct, and then they give an opinion on that position. Their opinion this year on the financials are that there is no change from draft to financial submission. So we have not changed our outturn. So what management put forward is absolutely supported by that independent view. And they issue what's called a true and fair opinion and an unqualified opinion on the accounts. That means that they are content that there's a clean bill of health on those accounts. So anyone wanting to seek an understanding of the financial health of the Health Board could easily look at those statements and place reliance upon them. So that's a real positive. Apologies for the graphics. I've tried to put a couple of ticks there, but they look a bit amateur. Apologies. I'm sure AI will help me with that later on. And then just to make you aware, the regulatory opinion, so that picks up a secondary aspect and it says, did you comply with your statutory obligations? Now, as I've already just mentioned, we had a set 8.6 million deficit target by Welsh Government. That's what we had to do for the year. So we haven't delivered that break-even position. Many health boards are in that exact same position. Many health boards have had a regulatory opinion that is adverse, a qualification on that same basis. Okay. I'll just briefly talk you through a little bit of the key headlines. That looks quite scary and busy, but it's essentially just picking up those four key categories. So in the first line, we were set an expenditure limit of 2.321 billion. As it's written there, 2,321.7 million, if that makes it seem a smaller figure. It's an enormous amount of money. We spend that every year. Every year we use that for healthcare provision across North Wales. Because our spend is 2.329 billion, we've overspent by 7.6 million. So we have a deficit position this year. That's actually quite a positive because we would set a target, as I mentioned earlier, of 8.6 million. So we have delivered our target, but we've not hit our key financial duty, and that's why the target is rated as amber. So it does reflect really good performance actually for the Health Board. And just for those numerous amongst us, that's 0.3% away from being in break even. So we're not that far away from balancing the books either. The capital expenditure, you can see there, we've got a £50.7 million allocation. 50.3 is where we outturned. There is a round in there, so it's about 350,000 under target. That's living within the £500,000 tolerance. And again, we did that in 23-24 as well. So that is consistent practice year on year, consistent delivery, which is really positive. Non-NHS invoices, we'll talk a little bit later on some of these as well. So 95.6%. So 95.6% of invoices were settled within 30 days within the Health Board for non-NHS. So that's pushing the cash position across the economy as well, which is real positive. We didn't submit an integrated medium-term plan, so we don't get a rating there. Of course, that was one of our key duties. As we've already discussed, we have done that for this year, so that's a positive. And then the final one is just to say on a cash holding basis, we're asked to be within 0 and 6.4 million. We're almost right in the middle of it, so £3 million was our cash holding at close. Again, we've hit that trajectory in the previous year as well, so ticks in those boxes all over. Okay. And just really to graphically illustrate that, so 2.329 billion was our spend, 2.321.7 billion was our allocation from Welsh Government. That left us with a £7.6 million deficit at close of the year. That means we have achieved and delivered our control target for Welsh Government. We've bettered it by £1 million, so a really good effort by all. It does show the deficits in the previous financial years, and when you add those up, obviously we get to a cumulative deficit of 30 million. That means we have not delivered that statutory 3-year target. So again, that's why we've got that regulatory breach. I'll just very briefly, if I may, take you through some analysis of the expenditure. It is very high level, but you can see there roughly by categorisation. We've not moved a great deal in terms of overall spend. The spend's gone up, but the percentage within the business has remained fairly consistent. Mental health on the top line, that's followed by commissioner contracts. I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. We've got some PAN BCU services, so we've got women's in the next category. Support functions, estates, utilities. We've got digital data in there. We talked about that, how important that agenda is to us a little bit earlier. And then we've got the nursing, medical, HR, finance, all those corporate functions all within that remit. And then finally, we've got, which is the majority of the expenditure, that's sitting with the integrated health communities. That includes our 3 main providers base as well. So 3 DGHs are in that. We've got West at circa 370 million and Centre and East roughly 480 million pounds worth of cost consumption. Okay, if I move on. So the next slide's familiar story. You can see that we're still committing our expenditure. Our financial allocation is going up, but we're committing that expenditure in broad terms at similar intervals in similar care models. This splits it by subjective. So I'll just again very quickly whiz you through the top. So non-pay drugs, £100 million just on secondary care drug allocation. Clinical supplies, just under 100 million as well. All of those rates, utilities, all built into that non-pay threshold, those categorisations of expenditure. 47% is essentially pay. Predominantly, that is driven by clinical pay, so medics. We've also got nursing, healthcare support workers, allied health professionals, all of those costs effectively bunched into there, and 50% of that is direct pay. It is a big figure, but we have over 20,000 staff, so we are the major employer, certainly within the north of Wales and possibly within the health community of Wales. Going on to that, we've got healthcare providers, so we do commission care from other providers as well. So continuing healthcare, where we are supported locally for placement of care. Circa 120 million is spent annually within those models. We've also got Kent of Chester, Liverpool, Robert Jones. They're all providing care for us on cross-border, across Betsy for Betsy patients, of course. And then we've got the JCC, which is our joint commissioning consortium. They commit resources for specialist care across North Wales, and we contribute to that. Ambulance service, etc. That's upwards of circa £300 million. And then the final section really is just looking at primary health and services. We've effectively got general practices, drugs against prescription drugs issues in the community is incredibly expensive. £132 million worth of consumption in that budget. So drug consumption and cost of drug consumption, perhaps not unsurprisingly, but it's still a significant figure that we are committing resource against. And dental services, of course, built into that as well. Very quickly, just on the capital allocation, so 50.3 million spent. Some of that on the left is leasehold premises. Some of it, a small proportion of that, of course, is fleet vehicles as well. But the majority of resource goes into our estate. There are three key categories in there. So the first one is discretionary. That's where the health board can take a decision as to where that resource is spent. So if you see discretionary on that table, that's what that means. We obviously get donated resources as well, which is absolutely fabulous. And then we've got All Wales Capital Programme allocations as well. So this is where there are additional allocations in year that are given to us from Wales that are driven through the overall capital programme for further allocation. Again, some of those areas are fairly self-explanatory. So equipment will be ultrasound machines. We've got patient monitors, IT, pretty much hardware servers, lots of development around how we can enhance and move away from that paper environment that Carol was mentioning earlier. In there, though, we do also have the Royal Orthopaedic Hub. That is Llandudno, and that is our development, our flagship development for trauma and orthopaedic services, of course, which we will be looking to open as we go forward. And then the only other one I'll draw special attention to is there is another category there. Largely that is IT infrastructure and network upgrades, but it also includes Caledfrin, which was an acquisition for this year through the Health Board for an additional community-based premise. Cool, if I move on. So I thought I'd just include this slide because this clearly impacts on our local community. It is really important to me that we transact the cash through the invoices really quickly to support our local business, etc. We have in there transacted just shy of 400,000 invoices. So that's about 7,700 a week, 1,100 a day, every day, all transacted and paid for within that 30-day window, well, at least 95.6% of them anyway. So it's the vast majority. So really proud of the team and the processes and the work that goes into making sure we turn those invoices into transactions for our local partners. Okay. I know what you're thinking, it's a summary and conclusion, so you're nearly there. Really just to bring that together then. So it's been an absolute fabulous year for us in terms of financial delivery. We had a target of 8.6 million. We exceeded that government target. We delivered a 7.6 million pounds deficit for the year, which is fabulous. Our accounts went in, every timetable was met. The draft submission from management was met with support through Audit Wales doing their independent assessment, who gave us a clean bill of health. Our accounts are true and fair. Any reader can look at those. And there wasn't an adjustment from draft submitted deficit position to outturn, which is an absolute credit to all the teams. We do have that regulatory opinion. We do have to change that as we go forward, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a little moment. And we achieved our capital limits. That's the largest capital programme we've had to deliver in some time. So I think the estates team did a fabulous job bringing that home for us. And we're still managing to transact those invoices through at record rates, which is great. We are setting a medium-term financial plan, integrated medium-term financial plan, which is balanced over the next 3 years. That has been submitted. So now we're on that next journey. So we deliver that plan as we go forward. And that means from a regulatory opinion perspective, we would remove that qualification upon delivery of that plan. So for me, really, it's just a massive job to all of the staff who did a fabulous job. Everyone has delivered this and everyone's been part of it. I'd express my thanks to our partners, our regulators, Audit Wales, who have really engaged with the Health Board. And I'll put my personal thanks to my team as well and take that opportunity to share that with them. And thank you all for listening to me. I'll hand back now, if I may.
Gawn ni ategu diolchiadau o'r cyfarfod blynyddol yma I Rusa'r tîm am y gwaith ardderchog sydd wedi cael ei amlinellu pnawn yma. Mae'n bwysig cydnabod y gwaith yna sy'n rhoi seiliau cadarn I ni ar gyfer y flwyddyn I ddod. Felly diolch yn fawr iawn I bawb am yr ymdrechion. Gai hefyd gadarnhau bod yr adroddiad blynyddol a'r cyfrifon wedi bod trwy'r gyfundrefn yn y bwr iechyd. Mae gen ni bwyllgorau, mae gen i bwyllgor sy'n edrych yn fanwl ar y cyfrifon blynyddol, dan garedyddiaeth Karen fan hyn, y pwyllgor archwilio, mae'r pwyllgor yna wedi gwneud yn drwyadl, ac yna mae'r bwrdd yn ei cyfarfod diwetha wedi gwneud gwaith yn craffu ac wedi cymeradwyo yr cyfrifon blynyddol a'r adroddiad blynyddol. Jyst eisiau rhoi sicrwydd yna chi bod ni wedi bod yn edrych yn fanwl ar yr adroddiadau yna a'i cymeradwyo nhw. Felly dyna rhan ffurfiol o'r cyfarfod os liciwch chi ar rhan yr ochr busnes. Dyn ni'n dod allan i gyfarfod blynyddol fel hyn, a rwan gawn ni symud i, dwi bron y deud, y rhan diddorol, ond dwi ddim eisiau dweud na, achos dwi'n gwybod bod nifer ohonych chi yn ymddiddori yn y ffigurau yna. Dwi'n gwybod hynny, dwi'n gallu gweld ar eich gwynebau chi. Ond dyn ni dod at y rhan lle fydd gennym ni wybodaeth i rannu ag chydig o stori am yr hyn sy'n digwydd yn y bwrdd iechyd a datblygiadau sydd yn ofnadwy o bwysig i ni wrth symud ymlaen. Felly, na i droi at Carol ar gyfer cyflwyno pobl yn yr rhan yma. Diolch, Carol.
Diolch, David, and sorry, Russ, I was flying through to the quality agenda before we dealt with those numbers. So huge thanks to everyone who's been part of that. So as the chair was saying, that formal part of the annual review and the accounts is complete. But at our board meeting at the end of this month, we will be really focusing on quality and taking a look at the changes and the progress we have made on the quality of patient care and how we work with colleagues right the way across the organisation to make those improvements. And before we hear from colleagues with real life examples of that, I'm going to introduce Teresa Owen, who's the Executive Director of Allied Health Professions and Health Science, just to give us an overview of the work that has been taking place in relation to improving quality. So, diolch fawr, Teresa.
Diolch i Philippa am sortio'r slides yn y drefn iawn. Dwi am siarad yn Gymraeg. I'm going to speak Welsh, colleagues, hoping you've got translation equipment nearby if needed. Diolch yn iawn. Fel mae Carol di dweud, mae'n bleser mawr gynnau gyflwyno heddiw, jyst mymryn o drosolwg ar y gwaith a'r ansawdd o fewn y bwrdd iechyd. A deud y gwir, dwi'n cyflwyno ar ran Angela Ward heddiw, dyn os gai ofyn i Philippa mynd yn ôl rhyw un sleid yn gyntaf os gai. Angela sydd yn arwain ar y gwaith ansawdd o fewn y bwrdd iechyd, a dwi'n falch iawn fel y cyfarwyddwr ar ran y gweithwyr perthynol i iechyd a gwyddor iechyd yr Allied Health Professions fel maen nhw'n cael ei wybod i siarad drosti heddiw. Ond wrth gwrs mae ansawdd a'r byd ansawdd yn bwysig i bawb yn y byd iechyd a mae o yn linell aur o fewn gyd o'n gwaith ni yn y bwrdd iechyd. A felly, hoffwn ni dynnu sylw at ddau aelod arall clinigol sydd yn helpu gyda'r gwaith ansawdd ac yn gweithio yn agos iawn efo Angela yn y maes yma. Sri, lle mae Sri? Mae Sri gyda ni yn y gynulleidfa. Sri ydy'n cyfarwyddwr meddygol ni ac wrth gwrs yn rhan hanfodol o'r tîm. A mae Jane yn y cefn, rhowch eich llaw i fyny Jane, da iawn. Mae Jane hefyd, sef yn gyfarwyddwr iechyd cyhoeddus, hefyd yn helpu efo'r agenda. Llawer o wybodaeth yn mynd i fod yn yr adroddiad fydd yn cael ei gyflwyno yn y bwrdd yn mis Gorffennaf, felly newch yn siŵr bod chi'n troi at hwnna. Felly trosolwg dwi'n rhoi heddiw. Yn gyntaf, hoffwn i ddeud fod y gwaith yma wedi cael ei wreiddio yn y neddf dyletswydd ansawdd 2020 yma yng Nghymru. A mae yna ddisgwyliad i ni gyhoeddi'r gwaith, felly dyna pam da ni'n cyflwyno heddiw a mi fydd yna sgwrs yn y bwrdd. Mi fydd yn yr adroddiad nifer o ardalodd yn cael ei danlinellu o ran y gwaith da ni'n ei wneud a be da ni wedi lwyddo i greu yn 2024 a 2025. Mae Carol yn barod i sôn am y system QMS sydd yn hanfodol i ni o ran ansawdd oherwydd mae hynna'n golygu bod ni'n meddwl amdan ansawdd drwy'r amser. Ac yma yn y gogledd mae gynnon ni system QMS, mae hwnna wedi cael ei cyflwyno i'r system ac mae gynnon ni app Cynta Cymru hefyd, falch iawn o ddeud hynny. Mae gynnon ni hefyd dangosoddrwydd ansawdd yr dashboard a mae yna bolisi erbyn hyn 3 pryderon integredig da ni'n ei ddefnyddio yn y bwrdd iechyd. Mae yna hefyd i bod cynnydd yn digwydd o ran meysydd y gofal, yn enwedig yn yr gofal digynllunio, iechyd meddwl a hefyd hefo ymgysylltu hefo'n dinasyddion. A fel y gwelwch chi fanna, mae datganiad Angela ar y gwaelod yn dangos sydd mor bwysig ydy hwnna i ni gyd. O ran yr sleid nesaf, mi welwch chi fanna y 2 neges allweddol i ni o ran y gwaith da ni'n ei wneud a'r magwaith da ni'n ei gymryd. Hynny yw, mae'n bwysig iawn o'r ansawdd bod y sefydliad yn cael ei liwio gan ansawdd a bod hwnna'n dangos y ffordd i'n gwaith i gyd. Dyna pam mae'r QMS mor bwysig. Bod ni yn gwella mynediad amserol fel oedd Carol yn sôn at wasanaethau gofal iechyd ar bob un lefel, a hefyd bod ni'n cydweithio a'n dinasyddion a'n partneriaid i gyd. Ac wrth gwrs pan welwch chi'r adroddiad, mi sylwch chi fod o wedi cael ei strwythuro o amgylch 5 amcan y bwrdd iechyd, oherwydd mae ansawdd yn mynd drwy'r cwbl lot yn hollol glir, a mi welwch chi hynny yn yr adroddiad. Yn y sleid nesaf, mi welwch chi hefyd sydd mor bwysig ydy o bod ni yn gwrando fwy, a mae hwn yn rhywbeth fel bwrdd iechyd da ni wedi ymrwymo ato, fod ni yn gwrando gyda yn cleifion, gyda teuluoedd, gofalwyr, yn cymunedau yn gyffredinol, ond hefyd hefo adborth llais, ac o'n i falch iawn o weld Jeff yma'n ystafell heddiw, a hefyd hefo sgyrsiau hefo'n rheoleiddwyr ni, a defnyddio bob math o wybodaeth er mwyn i ni gynllunio yn well. Ac o ran ansawdd, da ni wrthi yn trio wneud yn siŵr fod ni'n gwrando'n ofalus ar beth sy'n cael ei ddeud, a 4 prif pwynt ydy bod nhw eisiau aros yn llai am wasanaethau, gallu cael gofal yn lleol ac yn haws, mor bwysig di hynny, bod ni'n cyfathrebu fel bwrdd iechyd yn fwy eglur yn ystod triniaethau, a hefyd bod cymorth mwy cynhwysor a bod ni'n cynabod gofal da lle mae hynny'n digwydd. Ac wrth gwrs mi welwch chi'n adroddiad llawer o hanesion o'r gwaith da ni wedi wneud, wedyn dwi'n mynd i fynd drwy'r rhestr sydd ar y sleid yna, ond na i bigo ryw 3 o sgai. Llai o amseroedd aros drwy diagnostics, mae hynna wedi bod yn bwysig, ac wrth gwrs da ni wedi sôn yn barod am y ganolfan orthopedic. Da ni hefyd yn gwybod fod ni wedi cyflwyno siarter y plant, a da ni'n gwybod fod angen i ni dechrau hefo pobl ifanc, ac os da ni'n dechrau hefo'n babanod am plant, mi fyddwn ni yn cael y dyfodol iachach gobeithio. Da ni hefyd yn gweld pwysigrwydd rhannu straeon y cleifion, a da ni'n cydnabod y gwaith da sy'n cael ei wneud gyn yn tima ni. Ac yn ola, swn i hoffi sôn am y ffaith bod ni yn trio ymgorffori lleisiau'r cyhoedd yn gwaith ni, a da ni wedi gweld hynna fel rhan o'n gwaith cynllunio ni. Felly, yn ola, swn i'n troi at y ffocws felly i'r dyfodol. Ac i'r sleid nesaf, os gai, Philippa, diolch yn iawn. O, di mynd un yn rhy bell. Da ni. Lle mae gynnon ni ymrwymiad fel bwrdd iechyd i'r dyfodol, a bod ni yn mynd i trio cryfhau wrth gwrs, cryfhau bob peth da ni'n neud o ran y maes ansawdd. Mae hynna mor bwysig i ni, a bod ni yn dryloyw hefo'n gwaith ni. Dyna di ymrwymiad y bwrdd o ran yr ansawdd, mae hynna'n hynod bwysig. Y gwaith da ni'n neud yn glinigol, a bod ni'n trafod hynny, a bod ni'n gwella, da ni'n dysgu, a da ni'n dal i ddysgu drwy'r amser. Bod ni'n dal ati i weithio hefo'n arweinwyr ni, i wneud yn siŵr bod ni'n datblygu sgiliau nhw, fel bod gynnon ni ffwrdd iechyd cry. Bod ni wrthi yn wneud yn siŵr bod ni'n wneud siŵr fod 5 amcan yna oedden ni'n sôn am yn gynharach yn arwain y ffordd i ni'r dyfodol. A da ni'n ddiolchgar, mae rhaid i fi na ategu niolch i chi i gyd, ond hefyd i'n cymunedau i'n cleifion, i'r holl staff ar draws y bwrdd iechyd, am ei ymrwymiad nhw, at y gwaith ansawdd. A mi welwch chi ar y diwedd na datganiad y Prif Weithredwr a'n Cadeirydd Carol a Dyfed. Hynny yw, yr ymrwymiad dwfn i gynnig gofal tysturiol mor bwysig a bod ni'n adeiladu'r syrfeini i'r dyfodol. Na i adael i fanna gan wybod fod gynnwch chi sgyrsiau fwy diddorol yn dŵad. Diolch yn iawn i chi gyd am wrando.
Teresa, thank you very much for framing what is, I think, going to be a series of really interesting conversations. And Teresa has given a taster of the discussion that we'll be having at the next board about the steps we have been taking on quality. So, diolch yn fawr, Teresa. Absolutely delighted to be able to introduce some of our speakers from colleagues who work in very different services across our organisation. That's one of the real benefits of Betsy. We've got a huge geographical area. We've got lots and lots of colleagues who work with us, and we've got lots of innovation and creativity going on as well. So we probably could have filled the whole day with a lot of the innovation coming from colleagues, but we have got three special presentations for you. The first is from colleagues Nathan Littley, Craig Beaton and Tesney Sullivan, who have been developing and have developed a first in Wales in relation to vascular and specialist IV access service. And I know some of the board members have actually been to visit, and I have a feeling you may get more requests as people learn more about this. So if I can invite you to come to speak with us and to share the work that you've been doing. So diolch yn fawr.
Pnawn da. Thank you for inviting us to come and share our story with you today about the intravenous access service that is known as IVAS. Tesney Sullivan ydw i. I am the lead vascular access nurse for the Health Board, and I also lead the IVAS service. With me today is Dr. Craig Beaton. He's the IVAS medical lead, and Dr. Nathan Littley, who provides development support for us for IVAS. So the intravenous access service mission is to ensure access to best practice IV access for all. We want to enhance quality through innovation and provide a seamless care with streamlined processes. Slide 2. So an intravenous access service is a nationally recommended entity that provides assistance with all aspects of IV access. This includes device selection, assessment, insertion, aftercare, and complication management for all service users in the acute and community settings, as well as education and support for all the staff. IVAS is not there to take over routine cannulation. That's not our job, and that is a core part of normal care. However, we can help when it gets difficult or it's more complex. 90% of patients require some form of IV access during their stay, but up to 50% of these devices don't reach their intended dwell time. They fail. And this leads to complications, it leads to missed medications, it leads to missed treatments, so delays in treatments, and poor patient experience. Added to this, 30% of IV access is classed as difficult. And so you can see the need for an expert service becomes very clear. Currently, these services exist in various parts of the UK with a range of services that are offered, but rarely so fully featured. So here in our health board, until May of this year, no such service existed at all. And IV access is obtained on an unstructured and fragmented basis with no unified formal pathways at all, especially in the case of difficulties and complexities. But we're changing that. IVAS launched in Central IHC at Ysbyty Gan Clwyd as the first full-featured and dedicated IV access service in Wales, catering for any and all of our patients and community patients who, for inpatients and community patients who may require our help. And we've already improved patient experience and outcomes. And we've had national and international attention in this very short period of time, just from March when we launched. And that's due to our bespoke integrated IT system that keeps us as close to paper-free as possible, as well as extended scope of our service compared to others.
So when we talk about improving access, what we're really talking about is we want the right device for the right patient at the right time. Now, the gentleman you see here is a chap called John. You might recognise him if you saw our recent ITV news feature. So he shared his story and ours with everybody. John is one of our patients who lives with cancer, and he was one of the first patients that I've had placed a buried arm port into his arm. Now, normally that's something that would involve an operating theatre or an expensive interventional radiology suite. But IVAS have been able to place that in their own dedicated suite as a nurse-led service. They continue his aftercare and they continue to liaise with the cancer services, making sure that staff are trained and competent to use the device. And most importantly, what it means for John is that he is able to continue his normal life. He's quite a manual labourer. He has a fencing business, an outdoor business, and he carries on working just as he normally would, with significantly reduced risk. But he's quite a niche part of what we do. Cancer patients are a big chunk of it, but he's sort of the pinnacle, and there's a number of other patients that we can help along the way. Next slide, thank you. So one patient that we met not that long ago, kind of in the transition when IVAS was first launching, a fairly common sort of patient scenario. So a patient was admitted with a bowel obstruction. They required more than 30 cannulation attempts in the first 7 days of their hospital stay. That hurts. That causes distress to the patients and makes them anxious about every time that it's going to happen the next time. What tends to happen is that my colleagues in anaesthetics get called, but even with the help of ultrasound, they were really struggling to get a device in place. So the next step normally is that you arrange for a midline, which is a sort of longer dwell device to be placed. And currently that has to be done in theatre on the emergency theatre list, which is there for all the other emergency theatre work. And that's not an uncommon scenario in all of the hospital sites currently. It took at least a couple of days for that to happen. And then within less than 24 hours, that device had failed as well. And all of that time is lost treatment time, missed doses of medication, missed hydration. IVAS launched, we assessed this patient. Within 4 hours, we placed the right device for the right patient at the right time. And that patient went on to have a much improved stay from there on in. But you can see that in total, that's 10 days of subpar care, simply as a lack of availability of this kind of service. So what we've done so far, these numbers are probably in fact out of date by now, but we've placed a number of different devices for both cancer patients and these kind of difficult IV access patients that we just talked about. But then there's another cohort of patients which are sort of more planned cases, so nutrition patients, patients who we know are difficult IV access patients, we call them divas. We know that they're going to have difficulty every time they come into hospital, so we can address that at the front door, or it's certainly very early on in their hospital stay, and ultimately improve their experience for the rest of their hospital stay and future hospital stays, importantly. The next time they come in, they're not so afraid of having to have IV access, and their quality of care is better. And most importantly, we're preserving those vessels for any future healthcare needs that they have.
Thanks.
I'm very bossy. I'm so sorry. So, quality. The quality of care that we are able to provide extends beyond the provision of just that IV access device or gaining that access. As part of being in special measures, the gap in governance around IV access and care of devices was highlighted. And so to address this, IVAS collaborated with corporate education to develop a programme of cascade training on all aspects of care and maintenance of central venous access devices and midlines. This has extended throughout the acute site, and it's also into the community IV suites now as well, so we can get people cared for off the acute sites, and also moving through to community nursing teams as well. Education in device use, care and maintenance is vital to reduce the risk and harm to patients whilst optimising the value and longevity of devices and supporting sustainability, because that's really important too. We ensure governance and registration around the training, and all of this contributes to standardisation of care, which is really important if we're wanting these devices to last longer as well. The impact of this work speaks for itself. We can provide in-reach towards staff at short notice that can be meaningful and have impact on the quality of care that is perceived by patients and by their relatives. And the quote that you can see here on the slide, next slide. The quote that you can see here on the slide is evident that patients and families themselves have heard of IVAS and they're actually asking for IVAS, and that's testament itself to the impact that we're able to have at source.
Apologies. Around that. I'd like to share another example with you guys of how IVAS is facilitating care and delivering value for patients, talking about their health and well-being. That the health board has a patient who, because of their medical issues, has a really high requirement for fluid. They generally manage themselves at home, but they became unwell. They picked up a simple infection and they couldn't keep up with their fluid demands, so they came into hospital. The hospital put a cannula in and was trying to use that to keep up with their fluids. But the cannulas don't last very long. And every time they failed, they tried to put another one in. This went through a cycle, each time trying to use a smaller vessel, putting in a more difficult cannula. The pain there, but also the delays to treatment. They couldn't keep up. And so as this was happening, he was becoming more dehydrated and his infection was worsening. If you become dehydrated enough with an infection, you're very likely to develop renal failure and need to come to ITU for dialysis, which is where we met him. That process of being really sick meant that he developed heart failure on top of his renal failure. Now, in ITU and in the hospital, we do what we do well, and over the next 60 days, we nursed him in ITU and he recovered. He took up just under 10% of our ITU capacity during that time, but it's what he needed. He went back to the ward. He had another 30 days on the ward before he went home. So BCUHB saved his life. They did it at a cost of just about £200,000. And that's a really good thing. He's alive and he's well. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to return to work. So he's now no longer paying tax and he is receiving support. He is still on dialysis at about £20,000 a year. His heart's not great. He's permanently disabled, but he's alive and well. And he came in to support us at the IVAS launch day because he can see the value of this kind of service. I want to stress that at every point in his journey, the staff in BCUHB served him well, and there is no issue with that. They did the best they could with the services available for them at the time, but this kind of thing wasn't available. And we'd like to look at the difference that it would have made. Had he come in, he would have had a referral to the IVAS service. Shortly after that, he would have had an appropriate specialist line placed. 2 or 3 days later, he would have gone home. No ITU, no renal and cardiac failure, no permanent loss of employment, no lifetime of dialysis and disability. That's why he's keen to advertise for the IVAS service for us. And we got multiple day texts, and Nathan's example just now highlight that we're now getting ahead of that curve. We're getting those lines in. We're stopping those complications from developing. So IVAS can deliver value for the health board, and it's been recently highlighted across multiple different mediums. We've been mentioned in the Senate. Thanks to the interim funding that Glenclwyd has found for us, we've been able to reduce difficult access wait times on the emergency theatre list from 2.7 days on average down to same day. And thanks to the online referral system, teams don't need to spend hours calling around trying to find anyone to help. They send off a referral and then they go back to their other work, and IVAS comes along and puts in the right line for their patient. So one of the struggles behind the health board and North Wales in general is a lack of capacity, particularly in our theatres and in our hospitals. IVAS unlocks that capacity and it delivers value. We are currently removing strain from emergency theatres and from interventional radiology teams so that they can focus on their higher value work. Coupled with outpatient treatment, IVAS can ensure that more patients get treated in the community. So about 17% of our patients in hospital on IV antibiotics could go home and have those treatments in the community if they had the right kind of line. In addition to that, there are patients in the community that are being referred into ED and to acute medical units with conditions that could be treated in the community if they were supported by an outpatient service and had the right line. Then there's the fact that IVAS getting in early, doing a preventative intervention, making sure the patient has the right line, can prevent the kind of delays like the ones we've mentioned. And then finally, IVAS can free up our frontline clinical staff to use their most valuable core skills delivering patient care rather than sidetracking them into the need to find short-term emergency access when we can support them where that's our specialist area. All of this together means that apart from the value for the individual patients, the impact that this will have on their health and well-being, the effect on the increased throughput means that we can release benefits to the health board of about £2 million per year for the cost of our service.
So in summary, IVAS improves access by providing immediate and effective vascular access. We minimise delays and we enhance patient flow through the system. Patients get the right device at the right time, and staff have a single point of access where they can get support rather than having to go around the houses for support. IVAS significantly improves quality. We reduce complications and support better outcomes for patients, ensuring they receive the best possible treatment with the minimal of risk. IVAS is cost effective, as you've heard, and it releases other teams in theatre and radiology to carry on their normal work, which helps with waiting lists, etc. IVAS is a vital facilitator of care. We streamline processes, reduce reliance on emergency interventions, and facilitate early discharge, community therapy, and admission avoidance. Imagine the transformative benefits of a fully funded IVAS across 3 integrated health communities. We have staff there waiting and keen to make this happen. We would love to bring these benefits to all of the patients in Betsy Cyrwyddo University Health Board, and with your support, we will. So diolch yn rando, and thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Very much. Well, thank you very much indeed, Tesni, Craig and Nathan. You took me back to my renal nursing days of the 90s with patients who'd had lots and lots, we were talking about this earlier, Mike, but lots and lots of cannula tries and how distressing it is to patients to have to go through that. So if only we'd had this IVAS service back then. And they lay down some real start messages. So great care doesn't have to cost more is a big message. This is what we mean by value-based healthcare. This is what we mean by innovation. And now the big challenge is how do we scale and spread really great work across the organisation. So a huge thank you to you all for giving your time to share that with us, and hopefully lots of people at home watching this AGM. And I think we'll be very keen to keep supporting the service as we go forward. So diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to move next to our next of three presentations, and this is a service presentation relating to trauma and orthopedics, which is a massive specialty for us in the organisation, really, really key. And it doesn't take too much effort to put trauma and orthopedics North Wales, and you will see lots of innovation coming through. So they have innovation in bucket loads. And so I'm delighted to introduce Mr. Ibrahim Malik, who is a surgeon in Wrexham and is going to share with us the introduction of superlists, use of cheaper alternative technology. There's a bit of a theme going here, isn't there, about value, and marginal gains for the arthroplasty service. So thank you very much, Mr. Malik.
Thank you very much, everyone, for inviting me from Wrexham. And I'm really sorry that I could not meet you all earlier on the stalls, but I think it was really important for me to share a massive lemon drizzle cake, which was brought to us by a patient's wife, who happened to have his surgery on a super list on Tuesday. And another conflict of interest and disclosure, I can tell you that I haven't heard Carol's earlier talk. And this all we have is about efficiency, innovation. We're talking about marginal gains and put our money to our best use. So this is what our unit is. A couple of our colleagues are extremely shy. We are the 14 consultants in Wrexham, and who are very well supported by ops team, IHC directors. We all have a little bit of an ego, but the one thing I can tell about our team is I think we reached to that stage where we are content and say that, fine, we are going to put it aside. And you won't see us a lot in the media or something like that. But every year when we meet, we start to think about and say that, what are we going to do for next year? And last year we decided that, listen, let's do some things simpler and make sure that we take one step at a time and continue to progress. So the theme for last year was all about marginal gains. Next slide, please. Now, yes, I mean, the super list does seem like, oh, what is it? Another disclosure, I didn't come up with that. It was come up with one of our site specialty manager, Emma. Somehow, just a few months back, I was on phone with Emma and said that, Emma, why don't we do this? Why don't I run 2 theaters at the same time? Why do we do that? We know that we have a huge problem of waiting list. Fortunately, quite a few of us have started to utilize Abigail Hospital, which acts like a blueprint what Clendudnu is going to be in a few months' time now. But that does mean that when the consultant who's supposed to have an operation list at their own site, they move to the other side. So what's going to happen to these patients? What's going to happen to that theater list? Yes, it's well and true to say that, oh, it can be utilized by somebody else, but majority of this list, the list consists of high-risk hip and knee patients. Now, we cannot continue to defer them. So the whole purpose of doing a super list was, why don't we do this way? A surgeon can continue to work on 2 theaters at the same time. Now we know that majority of these patients, they are high risk. Nathan will tell you that these patients, they do take a long time to anesthetize. So as a surgeon, how many cups of coffee can I have in a whole day, right? So essentially the super list is we have a 2 simultaneous theater working at the same time. All of us meet at 8:15. We do the brief. One theater starts early. Second theater starts at 20 minutes after. By the time one theater finishes, the next patient is already in the anesthetic room, ready to operate, wheeled in a theater. You come in, have a glass of water, go and do the another operation. So as things stand, it's 4:15, and I just received a WhatsApp. My other colleague, Tom, is already finishing his 6th joint replacement in a day. So it's fantastic. I think every time the Llandudno project was coming up, this was always on the back of our mind that what are we going to do what are we going to do for our extremely vulnerable, high-risk patients who cannot go anywhere? So I think this is an ideal way of, yes, I mean, if you go to US or some other high volume centers, they can do 8 joint replacements in a day, but we are comparing apple versus oranges. So that's the whole thing about super list. Next list, please. Thank you. So this is coming to your efficiency. Now, the other thing which I noticed that the environment and the enthusiasm within the theater environment is so infectious. Everybody who walks around it, they said, oh, I want to be part of the super list next time. I want to be part of super list time. So I think I do see this creating a healthy environment, and hopefully it will improve the morale of our very hardworking staff. Next slide, please. Next one is, as Carol mentioned, about innovation and use of technology. Now, whenever we use technology, we as a surgeon, we do see ourselves as we do have a duty to see how do we manage each and every penny given to us. As you know, our West is doing excellent work in terms of robotic surgery, but there are better innovation. The technology, it keeps getting better and better and better. So whenever we look at any technology, we look at it, how easy it is, how quick it is it mobile, what sort of cost does it cause, and essentially, is it effective or not? So past year or so, we have been using augmented reality knee replacement, where the people like us, they just put in a little headset, and essentially it gives us the alignment of how we do the joint replacement without creating unnecessary tissue damage. So far, it is still in a trial phase. Compared to the robotics, which essentially will add nearly 1,500 pound expenses, this is sustainable. It's all wash and use again, and it costs only about 200 pounds. So we need to think about, do we need to spend that much money to have same effect? So that's that. We'll move on to next one. Some of you might have come across one of our very dynamic colleague called Mr. Kodomori. He's an excellent hand surgeon. He has been instrumental and nationally renowned for introduction of minor orthopedic procedure suites. Going on from that now, over past 6 months, so we have been, he has been working very well on ultrasound guided carpal tunnel release. As Nathan and his team mentioned about every individual who comes to us, we have the responsibility that we can get them healthier as soon as possible so that they can start to contribute to our society. With the carpal tunnel replacement, ultrasound guided, people can have only a small nick rather than a 2 inches cut on the wrist. One only steady strips, 1 week, back to work. So again, as I said, these are the innovations which are happening. Next slide, please. As Russell said, that we got a little bit of deficit, only 6.7 million. Every time when we start to, at least the good thing in our department, each and every step which we take, we have started to question. If you remember, when patients have a knee replacement, they used to wake up with a massive woolen crepe bandage over the knee. That bandage stays there for 2 days. And when you look at the literature and evidence, there is no evidence for it. It's just been going on traditionally on and on. Our surgical techniques have changed. We don't use any tourniquets anymore. And the most important thing is use of cryotherapy. So for last 6 months or so, majority of our consultants, we have stopped using woolen crepe. So if it's 30 quid, 500 at least that's 1,500, 15,000 pounds less for you now. But the jokes aside, I think we have already started to see a huge improvement in a patient's recovery, their reduction of strong opioid-based analgesics, they're getting home quicker. And the most important thing, whenever the patients, they start to see the wound from the start and say, look, this looks fine. Just wrap it, ice it, and it will get better. So that's that. I'm also in a research lead in Wrexham Mile Hospital for the orthopedics. Just this year, we are extremely proud that we received an award for a Rising Star of the Year for our participation in a national various trials by the National Institute of Health and Research. There are multiple national trials going on. We know that to have any meaningful evidence, any studies has to be a large scale. Those days are gone where one hospital used to have a randomized controlled trial of 50 patients, 100 patients, and ultimately you don't get any meaningful conclusion out of that. So this is why we are actively participating in majority of national trials, and that effort was very rightly acknowledged by NIHR. Next, please. All of us are extremely passionate about training. We have to produce our next generation. We have to. We continue to get exceptional report from our training program director. In fact, in the last 10 years now, this is the first time where, based on our performance for training provided to our specialty registrars, we are going to get one more training from Oswestry and one more training from Welsh Rotation. So that's an acknowledgement from our training departments towards each effort which we are putting. And that's it, really. We are not doing that much, but I think we are working really hard to make sure that Richard does get his deficit down. Teresa will get the quality, and Carol should be able to retire. And Chairman will continue with the BCM motto. Thank you very much.
That was a fantastic presentation, Prof. Thanks very much indeed. And I guess the take-home message for me from that is there are things, those little things can add up actually to quite a significant change, and to challenge ourselves. I remember those great bandages, you know, and more and more and more, and to challenge ourselves. Just because we've done it like that for so long, does it need to be the continued practice? And the sense of our clinicians across the organisation thinking about how well we can use the public's money to deliver care. So that's absolutely fantastic. And if I just say that our trauma and orthopaedic services across the whole of the Health Board very regularly get shortlisted for NHS Wales Awards. And again, you know, a very strong showing this year, so more to come on that. But fantastic. And you managed to please the whole panel there, Prof, with that.
Can I just say, it's a matter of interest, I'm sure maybe interest to the team, that the great champion of marginal gains is, of course, David Brailsford, who has been involved in cycling. Where does David come from? He's from Deiniolen, which is just down the road here, or up the Ogwen Valley or Peris Valley. So he is a great champion of that work. He was involved with cycling, wasn't he, with Sky? He's now got a bit more of a difficult job because he's involved with the Ilias team at Manchester United, I think. So he's got quite a lot of marginal gains to try and achieve there. But it shows the link between somebody in one area, then you've taken it up. I just thought I'd reference because he's from our region and he may well be listening to this and wanting to support us, who knows, but that would be good.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We're on our last presenter of the day, and we're talking about innovation and thinking very differently. And it's great to see this presentation here from Adam. Adam Mackridge is our community pharmacy strategic lead. And in terms of community pharmacy, really thinking about something called the Remedy project and studying the remote medicine supply machine in Golgethlau, and I thought this looked absolutely fantastic. So diolch Adam, welcome. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thanks very much. Hello, everyone. As Carol's just said, I'm Adam Mackridge. I'm the strategic lead for community pharmacy for North Wales. I also work with Bangor University, where I'm a lead investigator on this research project. So I'm looking at it from a research and an implementation point of view. So hopefully you'll find it interesting. Okay, so what's the challenge? Well, we're doing more and more remotely in our urgent and emergency care, and 70% of our out-of-hours contacts are now made over the phone with patients. Patients generally like this because it's much more convenient for them. They're not having to sit in a room full of other sick patients waiting to be seen. They can wait at home for somebody to call them, and it means they get care much closer to home. So it's a huge success story in lots of respects, and that's why it's being adopted across North Wales, across Wales, and across the world. However, we can't deliver medicines over the phone. We have this problem of how do we get the physical bit of that consultation to the patient at the end of the process. Because many of these patients that we can help, we can assess them safely remotely using video calls, photographs, and telephone discussions. But we will have some people that will need a medicine at the end of that consultation. How we get it there is the challenge I'm going to talk about with the Remedy project. So if we could have the next slide. So I'm going to just give you a fictionalized story here. This isn't a real patient because of confidentiality, but this is Gwen. So she's a farmer in the South Marianna area. She's got Addison's disease, which is normally really well controlled by her medicines, but she's got a tummy bug and she can't keep her tablets down. She's being sick. So she calls NHS 111 Wales. She gets through to a GP in the out-of-hours service who recognises some anti-sickness medication is all she needs, solve the problem. She'll be able to keep her medication down and she'll be able to be safe at home. However, everyone in the family's either got the tummy bug or they're looking after the farm because they're short-handed because of everybody having the tummy bug. So there's nobody to go and get these medicines from the GP out-of-hours base. So Gwen just goes to bed. In the morning, her family can't wake her up. They end up having to call an ambulance. She's admitted to hospital with a crisis brought on by the lack of her medication, and she ends up with a 5-day hospital admission as a consequence. That's a very realistic scenario that we could be talking about, where we could have given care to that patient the alternative wasn't an option for the patient, and then we ended up with an avoidable hospital admission and harm to a patient. So, a possible solution. This is a machine if you've been to the community hospital in Dolgellau, you'll have seen this delightful container there with the machine in it. That is the Remedy machine. That's the first one in the world. We've developed it with the manufacturers. And in fact, it's the only one in the world that is there at the moment. It's been 2.5 years of work to get the machine installed and get to where we are now. We initially started having conversations back in 2023 with the manufacturers and the suppliers in the UK, and we've adapted hardware. The machines are used in community pharmacies for another use, and they've written specialist software specifically for this. And that machine there has anti-sickness medication in it, antibiotics, steroids, the sorts of things that we might want to give to a patient following an urgent care conversation over the phone. We had that installed last summer. We then did lots of user testing. We got people from the local community to come and get chocolate out of the machine. Surprising when you offer free chocolate on Facebook, how many people turn up. We should have probably gone for something a little bit less high sugar, but never mind. It got them out. And we refined the software as a consequence of that. We improved on things. We improved on the messaging that we give to patients to help them use the machine. And around about March, April this year, we launched it, and you may have seen it mentioned on BBC. They ran some coverage for us earlier in the year. We've now got the machine being used regularly. We've had 4 people who've used that machine this month. We're building on that. Obviously, it's still very early days, but we're growing that use, and we're helping more people to access medicines that, if you live in Dolgellau or south of Dolgellau particularly, you'd be looking at a trip up to Allwen in Porthmadog, which is going to be a 3-hour round trip probably. And on some occasions, it may even need a trip to Bangor or Wrexham in order to get medication. So it's quite a significant time saving for patients, and it means patients like Gwen, who wouldn't otherwise be able to travel, they now have access to medication that they wouldn't otherwise do. So we're studying this as a pilot. We've got that one machine I talked about there in Dolgellau. We're looking at putting one into Holyhead. We're just working through the ins and outs of how we would achieve that, as they're the 2 areas we've identified that have the greatest challenge for people accessing medicines for North Wales at the moment. We have funding just over £250,000 from Health and Care Research Wales, which Bangor University are holding, which is where the study's being led from. But we're working collaboratively with Swansea University, Aberdeen University, Oxford University, and obviously Betsy are the main partner as well. So the aim is to have those 2 machines, and we're studying it over the 2 years. We've just started the project in April, running to March 2027. Now, the study's not looking at whether it works. We know it works. As I say, patients have been using it already. This is about how can we make it work in the real world, where we've got to get people to use it. We've got to get people using it safely, making sure that there's no harms, understanding how it changes the way we behave around medicines and remote consultations and that sort of thing. So we're looking at safety, efficacy, and that sort of thing. And as part of this study, we'll also be looking at health economics to try and get some sort of measure of the value for money. Should we be investing more in this sort of technology, or is it just a very expensive white elephant? We don't think it's an expensive white elephant, but we want to get the evidence to show it's not. So yes, still early days, but I'll end it there. Hopefully that's given you a little flavour about it. I'd be happy to tell you more about it if you grab me afterwards.
Thank you very much, Adam. Absolutely fascinating, because as you say, the tech works, but how will people engage with it? And that's one of the big things for the NHS, the ability to make the changes that people can engage with, accept and embrace. So we look forward to hearing how that goes. And thanks again to our partners in universities. So that completes the 3 presentations for today. I'm sure you'd agree that they were all absolutely fantastic. So fantastic, certainly, that congratulations go to the IVAS service for your NHS Wales Award nomination and shortlist. So we'll put our party dresses on, shall we? So, well done. It's great to be recognised in that way. So thank you very much, David. I shall hand back to you for the remainder of the proceedings.
Yeah. Cwestiynau, a felly, da ni'n chydig bach yn hwyl, felly dwi am egluro beth da ni am wneud. Dwi'n awyddus i sicrhau bod yna amser i ni gael detholiad o'r cwestiynau a cyfle i rhywun yn ymwneud o'r cwestiwn. Mae'n nifer y cwestiynau ymlaen llaw. Mi fydd y cwestiynau ymlaen llaw yn cael eu coeddi ar ein gwefan, y cwestiynau ar y tebion a llawn. Felly dwi am gyfeirio at rhai o rheini, ond hefyd rhoi cyfle os ydw i'n eisiau ffonddi cwestiwn i nawr yma. Felly, jyst fynd trwy cwestiwn sydd wedi cyflwyno yn sydyn. Yn cyfle ni mae Harry wedi codi cwestiwn am uned yn ystod fan pwyd sydd yn gyrchu gan mai ers tydyn o mis. Mae yna ateb llawn yna, mae gynnywion ydy man o ddatblygiadau ac mae Stewart fel pennaeth y stadau efo llygad, felly mi fydd na ddatblygiadau maes o law efo'r mater yna. Mae gen i gwestiwn gen Thea o gyngor neu fforwm gofal Cymru ac eto mae yna ateb ynghylch mater i'r technegol ynglyn â'r rhaglen gyfrifiadurol a ddefnyddir ac mae yna gyfarfodydd wedi digwydd efo'r fforwm ac mae yna drafodaethau'n digwydd, felly dwi ddim am fynd i fanylion gormodol am hynny. Cwestiwn nesaf sydd wedi cael ei gyflwyno ynglyn â triniaeth teg ar gyfer merched yng Nghymru ac cwestiwn sydd wedi cael ei gyflwyno gan y tîm iechyd merched ac mae'r pwnc yma yn un bwysig sydd yn cyffwrdd ar bwriad gyda ni fel bwr iechyd i sicrhau bod ni'n darparu gwasanaethau iechyd addas pwrpasol ar gyfer merched yn ein cymdeithas. Felly dwi am droi at Carol ac os ydy Carol eisiau cyflwyno rhywun arall i roi chydig o eiriau, bydd hynny'n iawn, ond yn gryno, Carol, please.
Diolch, David. I was really pleased just a few working days ago to attend an internal event in the organisation focused on women's health. I was particularly pleased because I had been, before I joined the Health Board, part of the work at a national level on developing a women's health plan for Wales. And in part of that discovery work, we really did identify some of the really key themes that were coming through from women across Wales, and certainly there's a very strong voice from women in North Wales. We have prioritised women's health in our integrated medium-term plan that we referenced earlier. And in that internal stakeholder event just a few days ago, reaffirmed the commitment to take that forward. Whilst it is really important that, the Women's Directorate, of course, are absolutely critical here in driving forward the changes, we certainly underlined the fact that women's health actually spans all of our services. And certainly in the feedback, we heard women accessing cardiology, musculoskeletal services and others particularly had views about those services as well. So we have had some investment from the Welsh Government to support our work, which we're really grateful for. And we will be continuing to publish our updates on how we're deploying that in order to really help translate that strategic plan into changes and improvements on the ground. So that operational element we'll be able to demonstrate, and to say thank you to representatives of the Fair Treatment for Women of Wales who very actively work with us. So we'll continue to commit to work with them and share the updates as we progress.
Now, Carol, and the full response will be shared with the Women's Health and Operational Team and, as I say, published on the website. Mae'n cwestiwn gan David, David Graves sydd efo ni pnawn 'ma. David, croeso eto ynghylch gwasanaethau iechyd meddwl o fewn mesur arbennig, a dwi am droi at Carol falle yn cyflwyno series yn ateb llawn David. Gai fanteisio ar y cyfle yn y cyfarfod yma i ddiolch i David am ei gyfraniad i helpu ni fel clwb iechyd i wella ein gwasanaethau iechyd meddwl. Mae David wedi cyfrannu llawer ac yn parhau i wneud, felly diolch y galon David yn gwerthfawrogi pob dim wyt ti wedi wneud, a diolch am bod yma heddiw gwerthfawrogi presenoldeb. So, Carol, I don't know if you want to pass to Therese, just to give a summary, because it's an important question regarding accreditation of a service, and it sort of sits in that wider context of our aspiration and ambition, also in terms of improving mental health services. So over to you, please.
Thanks very much, David, and thank you very much, David, for the question. I'm only going to say a couple of short things, and Trace is going to add a little bit. We have an ambition to be the best. The chair and I talk about that a lot, and we shouldn't be shy about that. We want to have really high standards in all of our services, and for that to be a shared endeavour between healthcare professionals, people who use services, and communities. Now, we're not unrealistic to know we've got a long way to go, but what we are better off doing in many ways is being open-minded, challenging ourselves as to where our problems are, where our potential opportunities for improvement are, and where we learn from others. And I hope today, through the whole presentation, people watching and engaging will have really got that theme of that drive for improvement. And accreditation is one of those areas. There's many more. So I'm going to just hand over to Teresa for a little bit more.
Oh, I'll carry on in English as the question was posed in English, but we've got a long answer, David, so I won't read it verbatim if that's okay. But I would say that all wards have the same standards that we work through in the health board. I'm clinical, I work with Angela very closely and the team. So I can give you that assurance in terms of the work that's happening. So whether it's on infection prevention, control, the health and safety aspects, and those additional specific metrics that we need as a health board, and the mental health pieces, that works in place, I would want to say that. And I think that's covered within the response. Maybe if I just leave it there and just say that we do pick up those elements as part of the Royal College psychiatry response, which I know you're very close to and supporting us with as well. And thanks to everyone in the health board. I have to say it's a bit of a team effort for the accreditation. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Next question we have is from Julian Nye Rogers regarding helping senior citizens stay well for longer, and highlighted in the question is an experience from another area of the UK, and the issues that are faced very often by older people in accessing health services. So, Carol, I don't know if you want to reference that.
Yeah, thanks very much. And again, there will be a longer response published with a lot more detail in relation to that. And I think what a great thing it is that we are living longer. And the developments over the last century have helped us to do that. But there are experiences from time to time, as you say, for people who have difficulty accessing services. And the emphasis that I put in my presentation on our role as a health board to help improve the health and well-being of the population, to support them to stay well, is an increasing focus of our work going forward. I think if we were to have the rest of the day, we'd be able to share all sorts of community-based initiatives and developments. And it is really building on those, the strength of communities that can provide that support and that connection Dealing with the challenges of loneliness and feeling connected are often at the root of some of this, but also being responsive and thinking that not always a visit to the ED department is the best offer that we can make. So primary community care services, a much greater emphasis on care and support for people as close to home as possible. And that's our commitment that we've made in the integrated medium term plan. We're determined to follow that path through. And I know I can see the Vice Chair nodding vigorously because the Vice Chair has a particular lead on this in the board. So yeah.
And we know that the cohort of the population which is older is increasing in our region, and that means we've got to get an extra focus on trying to predict the demand, but also looking at measures, as you say, that will help people stay healthy at home and the care they require is closer to home. And there are lots of community initiatives happening across the region to support people, particularly about the loneliness issue that many face. So that's good to see. Especially mine, a question, Nessa. John Bryn Jones has a very, very short question. Are waiting lists going down? But there's a subtext to it, I think, and basically he's asking, can we really believe what people say that waiting lists are going down? And that's directed to Welsh Government, but I suppose it's a question equally for ourselves because we've just talked earlier about our lists going down. So maybe it's good to talk briefly about the whole matter of waiting lists, waiting times, and can we give people some encouragement that the situation will improve, because it has been dire. There's no other way of describing it. People have really suffered over a long period because they've been waiting too long to access treatment.
Yes, thanks very much, David. And the question is a really good question, but there is a nuance on that. So are waiting lists really going down? Well, waiting times are going down. The number of people waiting over 2 years for their care and treatment in this health board is reducing. We have reduced that by 47% since January of this year. And as I said in my presentation earlier, aim to get to 0 by the end of this year. That is a challenge. And at the starting point of the year, 10,000 people, we got it to 5,000 now. 2,800 is our aim by the end of September, and then 0. We're doing a huge amount of work on that. Some of that is working with the independent sector. So people, members of the community may get appointments coming through their door or on their phone as text messages, offering them treatment from one of our partners. And we encourage people to take that up or to tell us if they don't want that, and we can offer that to someone else. On the question of waiting lists, the size of the list, that's a slightly different question. And the number of people on a waiting list is not yet going down. That means those referrals keep coming in. But what we're learning is those referrals for an opinion aren't the only option that we can give to patients. So, for example, I mentioned earlier the community assessment days around physiotherapy, where we're offering a different way of accessing an opinion, a consultation, or some advice and guidance. And increasingly as a health board, we will be offering those sorts of options at the start rather than at the end of a very long wait. So we're hoping that our endeavours will reduce that waiting list. The government has also this year allocated significant funding for additional appointments that will mean, if we can deploy that well, the overall waiting list itself will come down.
Thank you for that question as well. Next question I'll refer to briefly is from Neil Ackers of the North Wales Prostate Cancer Support Group. Is Neil here, by the way? Yes. Neil, I recognise this question because you wrote to me some months ago with the very same question, and you can get the very same answer again unsurprisingly. But Neil has raised an important matter regarding innovation, as we talked about earlier, and the Da Vinci robot and the ability to use that technique to help treat people. And Shri has supplied an answer very similar, as I say, to the one you had from me previously. But we're saying that we have recognised the need to think about that technology and the way we can work to ensure we've got the cutting edge, the very latest, which is not always easy because technology is moving, but there's a great opportunity, hopefully, for us to plan in the longer term with that. And we hope to get something really in the next period that will add to the provision we've got. So there's a very long answer from Shri. It's along the lines you heard earlier, but we are looking to see what we can do in order to get that provision, which we know will then help outcomes and help people who have that condition, which is a common condition, as we know. So to put out for that, we have then a really good question from Dorothy Harland asking about prevention, and she asks something quite specific about the consumption of fibre, but the principle she raises in her question is about how far can we go, or how can we progress the emphasis on prevention that will then produce better health outcomes. And sometimes it's very small things she refers to, and do we need to be really stark and sort of setting up alarm bells for people to take any notice? She refers to the previous situations we had years ago between the connection between smoking and cancer, and now there are all the warnings and so on. So do we need to go to that space to get prevention effective, or can we do something another way?
Fantastic question from Dorothy. And I know that if I gave Jane the floor, she would probably talk for a few hours about the whole prevention, behavioural science, and how we really engage. And just to say that Jane, as our public health director, has really been encouraging and supporting the wider efforts on prevention across the health board and with partners. But the short answer here is enabling and supporting people to be very active in their own health actually improves health. There are perhaps specific interventions that can support, and there's a detailed answer for Dorothy about some of those. But part of our work going forward, and I mentioned the 10-year strategy earlier on, will be about focusing much more on what we can do as an organisation working with others to support that well-being, that prevention and that early intervention. And big government policy, we often talk about sugar, for example. These are some of the big decisions that governments take. Smoking bans and those sorts of policies do have an impact, but they can be big policy as well as individual actions. So we'll share a little bit more with Dorothy more directly, if that's okay, Chair.
Great. Thank you very much. And Jane, in her comprehensive response references diet and so on, and I just want to talk there about a project not far from us called Bwyd Da Môn, which is in Ynys Môn, Anglesey, and there's similar work happening in Gwynedd and other areas where there are groups who collect food that often otherwise would go to waste, and that is shared with the community who are in need of that, and also supports people on diet and often cookery skills as well, which is really important, fundamental then to address some of the issues that has been raised in the question. Another question we have, I'm not going to go into detail of, it's by Paul Matthews about waiting times, and he's got a particular experience, which I absolutely recognise, but that is the subject of a formal communication with the health board. So I shouldn't go into details of that in terms of Paul's experience, only to say we do recognise that waiting times in ED across the health board are varying. It's Thursday, isn't it? I think it was last week I was speaking to somebody who said he'd accessed ED in Ysbyty Gwynedd and was in and out in a matter of hours, a few hours. In fact, it was about 3 hours. Then another family was in ED a week later, and it was considerably longer. So we recognise that it varies depending on the ailment and so on, and we know that there's huge pressure in the system, and we know that we need to try and improve people's experience. It's not always the best when you access ED, depending on the day, depending on the time, depending on the ailment as well. But we understand, and we are going to put a renewed focus. Tamina, who is our, I think the title is Chief Operating Officer, fairly new in post, has got renewed vigour and focus on that area together with other colleagues. So we hope to see that improving over the next period. But thank you for the question, and I know there will be correspondence with you. So that's the end of the official questions that have been presented beforehand. It is 16:24 precisely. I am happy to take any further questions from the floor. So os rhywun efo cwestiwn, dwi'n hapus I holi cwestiwn a nawn ni'n gorau I ateb. Can I also say, as I say in board meetings, if you wish to connect with us anytime, please don't wait for an annual general meeting. You can send correspondence to myself, Carol, at any time, and we will do our best to respond. Similarly, if you want us to come along to your community maybe and talk about health and wellbeing services, we're very happy to do that. We do go across the whole of our region, holding conversations. We've done that in the past. We'd be happy to do it again. So please connect with us anytime. Ond yn y cyfamser, oes na rywun efo cwestiwn? If you do have a question, unsurprisingly, David has a question, I know, so the microphone will get to you. Os ti'n gallu deud pwy yw ti, a wedyn gofyn y cwestiwn, David. Great. Thanks, Philippa, for David. You have a question.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. It's not so much a question as Carol made the point about ED being in the media, not for the best reasons. And yet you've got a wonderful set of minor injuries units who don't seem to get to the media or into the public consciousness. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for a more synergistic relationship between the minor injuries units and ED, and people perhaps signposted where it's more appropriate to attend, because they are brilliant and there's more facilities there, and I think people are aware of.
Great question. And also, if you go next door afterwards, you see a stand by the pharmacy service who've got a little piece of paper which is about directing people to the right service, and it includes actually pharmacists as a potential as well as MIU. But Carol, that's a really good point that David has raised. Any thoughts on that, please?
It's a fab point, David, and one that we have discussed on a number of occasions as part of our overall plan. One of the pieces of feedback that we've had is MIUs are great, but we're not quite sure when they open, when they close. We're not quite sure if they close for lunch, and we're not quite sure if the X-ray is there. So there is something for us to do as a health board about the consistency of what our offer is, so that members of the public can always think, right, okay, I know that's open from 8 till 8. I'm going to go there and I know I'm going to, be seen, rather than thinking, well, I don't want to go there and then find, and then I got to go. So I think the onus is on us to do some of that work. And perhaps publicise as well what actually can be offered in a minor injury unit. Certainly in my own experience, we've broadened, and I was in a MIU in Gwynedd a couple of months ago that are doing minor illness as well as minor injury. And I think offering more services under that one roof will mean more people will come to that service. So watch this space, as we say. Tamina has got the bit between her teeth, no pressure, Tamina. We're going to work really hard on that, because no one really wants to go to an ED when there's a suitable alternative. So.
Great, diolch yn iawn am y cwestiwn yna, David. Unrhyw arall eisiau gofyn cwestiwn? Anybody else wish to ask anything? As I have said, please, if you want to connect with us anytime, either if you've been here today or if you are viewing, please feel free to email us to connect, and we will gladly do our best to not only answer your questions, but take any information you've got. We wish to emphasise that, the work of the Health Board is to work in conjunction with our population. So the experience our population has of health services is absolutely key for us to help improve. So that's why that connection is important to us, and why we see that as a resource to support us on our improvement journey. So please don't be afraid at any time to connect with us. We'd be very grateful for that. Os nad oes cwestiwn arall, dwi am ddod â'r cyfarfod yma I ben, felly gan ddiolch I chi gyd am fynychu heddiw, gobeithio bod o wedi bod yn ddiddorol. I think the presentations we've had today have been really useful and informative, and one of the key things to take out is innovation, isn't it? Who would have thought in a health setting there's so much innovation? But it really is the key to our future, because not only is it to do with being more efficient, but it's to do with improving health outcomes, health and well-being outcomes. I think that is a theme we can take from this afternoon's presentation. And also the fact that, individuals can make a difference in this organisation. Individuals who are enthusiastic, individuals who go to another country like Canada and come back with an idea. That was Tesney. She was in Canada practicing and came back with an idea. And that's what we've seen in that service today. So really good to embrace that, and I hope we can do more of that. Diolch unwaith eto, gai ddiolch hefyd am y gwasanaeth cyfieithu. Diolch hefyd i'r tîm sydd wedi helpu trefnu heddiw, a John am yr holl waith efo dechnoleg. Final word, Carol, if you wish to say anything before we all depart, and wish people well and see you in the future, hopefully.
Just a final word, really, to thank all of our staff. We have 20,000 plus staff across the organisation, and I'm really confident that every single day people come to work to do their very best for the people of North Wales, and our commitment to keep doing that, to work with people and for people. So look forward to being able to be in a position to share our progress through the year, and particularly back here in our AGM next year. So diolch yn fawr iawn, diolch o galon.
Diolch yn iawn, ac yn hwyl fawr I chi gyd. Diolch.